We are diving into the transmitting teammate today. And I say diving in, is we're really just going to scratch the surface a bit and introduce our transmitting teammate. And we're going to talk about the three categories that make a transmitting teammate. It's transmitting teammate. And we're going to talk about some common tendencies when it comes to behaviors of this instinctual bias, and then give you some direction and some resources for diving in, learning a little bit more if this happens to be one that you really identify with, or maybe you don't identify with at all, but you recognize a teammate in and you want to understand them a bit better. So, when you are ready, I will see you on the other side of this and we'll get into our transmitting teammate. Let's talk about the transmitting categories. We've talked about preserving instinctual bias in a past video. We're going to be talking about navigating in a future video. We have preserving that's focused on nesting and nurturing and nesting, kind of risk management, routines, well-being, maintenance. We have our navigating instinctual bias, which is focused on group cohesion, hierarchy management, role clarity, information sharing. And then we have our transmitters that's focused on attracting and bonding. And the three categories here are asserting, a broadcasting and narrowcasting category, and then we have an impressing category. And underneath our asserting category, this is where you have a high drive, high ambition. You're going to find in this subtype, you're going to find low inhibition. So unlike our preservers who maybe do a little bit more risk avoidance or risk management, thinking about the consequences, or like our navigators who might be a little bit more focused on what will people think, what will people say, our transmitters don't really care as much, or they'll worry about it, but they'll think, okay, well, we'll deal with that later. They're going to jump into action, move the needle forward. Move the needle, move the ball forward. There we go. And then the last subcategory here is this need satisfaction. So I want to go after what's going to make me satisfied, what's going to make me feel good. And I'm going to go with full force, kind of that go big or go bigger energy. The next subcategory is broadcasting and narrowcasting. And this is where the one-on-one nickname will sometimes come in here. So you might have heard, if you've been following the Enneagram for a while, this transmitting energy is closest to the sexual subtype that you might be familiar with. Sometimes they'll replace sexual with the term one-to-one because you can't really say sexual in the workplace. However, one-to-one is just a piece of the transmitting energy, and there's a one-to-one dynamic that kind of shows up in different ways in all three of the subtypes. So it's not entirely accurate, and can be confusing, and make that subtype typing process even more confusing than it already is. But how it shows up in the broadcasting, narrowcasting category here for transmitters is that they will walk into a room and they will just beam a broadcast out to the room, for example, out into the crowd. I'm here, pay attention. And they may do that with their charisma, their behaviors, their tone of voice, the stories that they're sharing, what they're saying, the vision, the big goals about what they're dressed, who they're with. And they're kind of going to signal, hey, I'm here. And then when someone finds them interesting and wants to learn more about them, or maybe they find somebody else interesting and want to learn more about them, kind of zoom and do that narrow casting. And that's where that one-to-one connection comes in. They're going to want that deep, meaningful conversation. Maybe it's kind of an intense conversation. in. But when it's over, okay, I'm going to zoom back out. I'm going to broadcast, find somebody else new and exciting to talk to. And then I'm going to zoom in and narrowcast on them. So it's this kind of ebb and flow of broadcasting and narrowcasting. So there's that one-to-one. I just mentioned signaling. They're going to signal kind of dress to impress. Hey, I'm going to signal that I'm healthy. I might signal that I'm wealthy. I might signal that I'm special or unique in some way, and do that with objects or other people or material things. But there's going to be some sort of signaling to accompany this big vision, this legacy that they want to leave. And then they also have seduction under this category. And by the way, we follow the awareness to action Enneagram framework. And that's where this terminology comes from. That's where these categories come from. That's where the descriptions come from. And it makes it just so much more clear when you understand it. It can be confusing if you've learned the Enneagram before, but if you're just getting into the Enneagram, it makes it clear. It provides a lot of guidance that makes sense for how to grow specifically in the workplace. And so, we love the awareness to action team and the way that they talk about the Enneagram. So that's what we use here. And they will use the word seduction under the category broadcasting and narrowcasting. And this really is, it doesn't have to be sexual. It's just this ability to draw people in. Transmitters may not even mean to do it. They just have this people just find them intriguing. People find them interesting. And so people will kind of be drawn to them. And they can make that person feel like the most important person on the planet, in the room. This works really well with salespeople and making their customers feel really special. And then the last category is impressing. And this is, hey, I want to leave a legacy. This is Steve Jobs. I want to leave a dent in the universe kind of energy. I want to be remembered beyond my time here on planet Earth. They tend to be really charming. Charm is the next subcategory here, charismatic. Again, people are just kind of drawn to them. And then this impact, they want to change the world. They want to change their organization. They want to change the company culture. They want to change the team. Whatever it might be, they want to make a difference. They want to feel like what they are doing is important and will be remembered and will have a lasting effect. So we got asserting category, we got broadcasting, narrowcasting, and we have impressing for our transmitting teammate categories. Some specific behaviors that might come from this is that they tend to be excellent presenters. They tend to be incredibly persuasive and influential. So they make great salespeople. And you can kind of hear some of that, like business development, sales department kind of energy. And then you can kind of see why this energy might come into conflict with maybe the legal team or the accounting team or the HR compliance team, who may have more of that preserving energy. So, while they may work for the same organization, when you kind of look at what do preservers focus on, what do they prioritize? And then here we have transmitters, what are they focused on? What do they prioritize? It's like, oh, well, this makes sense why our departments have some friction, or even with individuals within certain teams. There may be a preserver on a, really dominant transmitting sales team, for example. And it's like, oh, that makes sense maybe why this person sometimes struggles or gets frustrated, or why we get frustrated with this person. So it shows how we are seeing the world, and that also shows how other people are seeing the world and what they're valuing and focusing on. Other clues that you might be a transmitter at work, or just transmitter, is that we talked about, you can make your customer feel like they're the only person in the room. You just tend to intuitively understand the market or the customer. I've heard another Steve Jobs example like this. It's like people weren't asking for iPhone. They weren't asking for, what do you say, 1,000 songs in your pocket, with the first iPod. But he just kind of knew what the market would want. And he had this vision. He wanted to make a big impact, kind of do something unique, one of a kind. So it's the type 4, transmitting type 4, but there's a lot of this transmitting energy you'll see in him. Our transmitters are really good at building strategic allies. They're able to bring the sizzle to their self promotion and their career advancement, as well as product promotion, and really good at articulating the goal and the vision and getting other people inspired and excited and motivate them to actually take action towards those big goals. Now, sometimes they may neglect group dynamics, social cohesion, and so their leadership style can be incredibly inspiring and visionary, but when it comes to team building, bringing people together, they may struggle in that area. They may struggle because they can sometimes dominate conversations or even relationships with this boldness, with this charisma, this big vision, and get frustrated that people aren't as creative or visionary as they are, or people aren't moving fast enough. And then other people can see them that they s can see it can seem to other people, there we go, that they are more focused on their own agenda than that of the team or the organization. I don't know that a transmitter would necessarily say that about themselves, but from the outside looking in, the behaviors can sometimes look like that, whether it's their intention or not. So this type is really good at the sizzle, bring in the sizzle to themselves, the company, the product. It's kind of your face of the company. This is your typical stereotypical startup founder energy is bringing this transmitting energy. And then though, there's going to be some areas that they struggle in. And so over on the podcast, Enneagram at Work podcast, we talk about what that relationship is like for the preserving piece and the navigating piece when it comes to people who are dominant and transmitting, what that looks like, what they want to pay attention to, what they maybe don't need to pay attention to. And then we also overlapped all 9 types with the transmitting subtype so that you can see, what does a transmitting 1 look like? What does a transmitting 2 look like? What does a transmitting 3 look like? And that might be a really helpful episode for you if you have an 8 in your top 2 or 3 that you are struggling to narrow down. Um, like I said, there's a lot of 8 energy in the transmitting. There's a lot of similarities. So if you are a transmitting 8, you are kind of the ultimate textbook 8. If you are a preserving 8, you might identify with that starting to feel powerful, but the way you behave and show up, it's going to look very different as a preserving 8 than a transmitting 8. So it really does help explain some of the nuances and maybe why you identify with one type, but you don't really recognize yourself in some of the descriptions that are out there. 6 and 8 is a big one that I come across, and we talk about that over on the podcast, but there is a transmitting 6 that is almost a lookalike for an 8. The difference is an 8, their core strategy motive is striving to feel powerful, where that 6 is striving to feel safe and secure. And so they may act like an 8, but at the end of the day, they're kind of motivated. They're using that strategy of safety and security. And so rather than freeze or flight, they are going to fight. And that can be a common, I guess, frustration in type discovery, in the type discovery process, because it's like, gosh, I see so many of these 8 qualities. However, I really resonate with that safety and security piece of a 6. It may be that you are a transmitting 6. I see this also a lot with transmitting 1s. There can be some confusion. Am I a 1 or an 8? It's usually, am I transmitting 1 or am I an 8? Also, I'm trying to think of another one. Transmitting 2 might be another one that you might be struggling with. They both very much want that kind of intense connection. This type 2 tends to be a little bit more extroverted. They're very encouraging and inspiring, but can also be a little demanding, like an 8. So again, they can be driven by this need to be connected, but they may have behaviors of an 8 because they have this transmitting energy woven throughout. So some things to consider in your typing journey, and just to understand yourself a little bit better, depending on, maybe you've narrowed down your type and now it's okay, let's look at the second layer. So I appreciate you being here. Like I said, please ask your questions, share your comments, your real life experience. is with the subtypes, with maybe your own typing journey, how that's helped you. As I said before, I am Sarah Wallace with Enneagram MBA. We are a team training company. All we do are team workshops for the most part, team trainings, team workshops, anything from 2 hours to 2 days. And we do additional programming. And so if you're looking to bring the Enneagram, not just to your own professional or personal development journey, but to your team as well, I'm going to invite you to check out our workshop and training options over at enneagramMBA.com. And with that, I hope to see you back here again for another video.